All right, everybody, we are back again for another episode of the Coach's Compass. It's Coach Coop reporting live now in America, right? Did a little bit of change of scenery and everything like that. But we got my boy, Coach Lakin. Said that correct, right?
Locking. You're good.
See, man, locking. I keep messing it up, bro.
No
But
problem.
we'll get it squared away. Remember, everybody, hit that like, subscribe, comment button down below as we continue to help this thing grow and continue to bring on cool coaches like my boy, Coach Lakin, right, from all over the world. So, Coach, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Sure. Yeah, so first of all, happy to be here. Thanks for taking the time to bring me on the pod. This will be a fun talk. So my name is Locken Reed. I spent the last 4 years at Gustavus Adolphus College in southern Minnesota. I was both going to school, like that was my undergrad college experience, but I was also coaching the men's hockey and men's soccer teams there. They play in MIAC Conference and D3 NCAA. So I was their strength coach for 3 years. I started with the men's soccer team, and then that same fall, I picked up a job with the men's hockey team as well. And so that was an awesome experience, be working with 2 college teams while I was still going to school. Beyond that, I also spent 2 summers coaching at Velocity Training Center. It sounds like a pretty similar kind of setup to what you have at D1. But it's primarily hockey players. So I was an assistant coach there. Head coach was Nathan Welty. He hired me on after my junior year of college to be their assistant strength coach. I worked with mostly hockey guys there, all the way from youth athletes to pro NHL players. So that was an awesome experience. And then outside of those jobs, I work as my own business at Workhorse Training. So that's primarily online coaching. So I have programs that I sell online. And then I have a couple of clients I work with who are writing individualized programs for their own training. And that's all sports. Again, it's a lot of hockey and soccer, but I work with guys in fighting, baseball, wrestling, track and field. So it's fun to work with different kinds of athletes. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm at home in Minneapolis right now. Got another training session later on today. So yeah, I'm just happy to be here. Thanks.
Man, it's great to have you here. But what got you started in this journey of strength and conditioning, and why this side? Because I mean, being a former athlete and then kind of going into training athletes now, like it's tough. You know what I mean? It's a hard field to walk into and kind of still trying to do things that you did before, but also trying to learn from some of the best in the game. And then the system now with college especially is a lot different. And then you got social media and everything. What made you want to get into this field?
Yeah, for sure. So I started off, I was just playing hockey when I was younger, and I just loved the training part of it. I just loved going to the weight room or shooting pucks or doing like the extra training outside of the sport. And then as I developed through high school, I realized I really enjoyed the training more than I enjoyed the actual sport itself. And like that was a great opportunity because I wasn't going to be a hockey player for the rest of my life, but I could be coaching for the rest of my life. So that's maybe a good passion in the end for me. So I connected with a couple of the hockey coaches who I trained with growing up. One of them being Jack Blatherwick. He was actually the off-ice coach for the 1980 Miracle team that beat the Soviet Union. So that was a really cool mentor to have grown up. Just him talking about how he worked with Herb Brooks and how they trained to play the Soviets. So he was an amazing coach to have as a mentor. I also had my high school strength coach, Isaac Anderson. I think he works with Maximum Impact Training now in Minneapolis. He played college football at Wisconsin. Then he played in the NFL for a couple of years. So he was another amazing mind to have to learn about training from. And so I started off just working with my own high school hockey team. We just didn't really have an off-season strength coach in the summer. And so I just offered I could just run our training for us. And that was when I was a junior, I think. And so my junior and senior year summers, I just ran our team summer training. Outside of that, I worked with a couple younger athletes out of my garage. I have a great weight room setup that I got from my uncle, my garage setup. And so I just had some younger friends come over and I'll just train you for now. Then once I got out of high school, I did a summer internship with Training House, which is a big gym in Minneapolis. That was with Kirk Olson. He was the old strength coach for the Minnesota Wild. And so again, picked up a lot of great knowledge from him. What's up? And then after that, what did I do after that? And then I went to college. And then I started working with men's hockey, men's soccer. I did a great internship with Yoakum Strength Training. So Austin Yoakum is a big strength coach out in Minneapolis as well. And that was another really cool experience. I spent the whole summer with him every day, going to his gym, helping run the sessions, picked up a ton of training knowledge and coaching knowledge and just life wisdom from him. And then yeah, I went on to the velocity. So really, it was just I just got into training myself, thought it was fun, and then just kept finding new opportunities to learn from smarter people and just picking up more experience coaching athletes along the way. So really fun ride, honestly.
And what brought apart, because watching the IG, the workhorse training, what brought that apart? You know what I mean? Like, how did you get the thought process of like, yo, I'm gonna start workhorse training and
Mhm.
kind of change the game and whatnot, and how, because it says, every team needs a workhorse. What is a workhorse, and then why that?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great story. I'm glad you asked that one. But my friend's dad, man, I was probably in like fifth grade or something, maybe fifth or sixth grade at this time. And my friend and I were just training. We were just working out in the our old youth hockey weight room, which is really more of a room with like some plyo boxes and like random sandbags in there. And my friend's dad comes in and he sees us training and he just goes, "Every team needs a workhorse," and he just walks out. And that just stuck with me my whole life. Like every team needs a workhorse. And so I was just thinking if because I was when I was doing really small group training, like one-on-one training or two guys at a time training, and if we could get this one guy to be like the workhorse on the team, like that's kind of what was my philosophy back then. Like hard work is the most important thing, and so for me, a workhorse is just like the guy who's always going to push a little harder. You can always count on to be the effort guy to bring it every day, and I think that's important, definitely. And I think when I was younger, kind of when I was still playing sports, I maybe prioritized the hard work and this like the nose down grind at all costs. I kind of maybe prioritized that a little bit too much and didn't consider maybe like what you're working hard on or whether hard work is actually the greatest value to have in this situation. Being a little more, I think I've learned to be a little more dynamic with your values over time. Of yeah, there's absolutely times where it's like if you're the hardest worker in the room, you'll succeed. You should prioritize hard work. There's also times to think about to maybe analyze what should I be working hard on? Maybe do I need to think about the skill of this movement more? Do I need to think about maybe the relaxation in this movement? Do I need to think about maybe the mental side that isn't just the pure determination side of training? And so I think it's workhorse has developed from a pure commitment to absolute hard work over anything else to being more of a fluid mindset of being able to tap into that maximum output, max effort determination, but also being able to flow to maybe a different sort of mental state, maybe one that's more creative or thoughtful or reflective, and maybe able to use multiple mindsets to ultimately achieve the goal you're going after, not just being stuck in that one rut of going just to work without thinking about why or how or other methods along the way. So yeah.
How do you implement that with the working with college athletes, and then also working with like people online, like kind of getting them to understand like, hey, you can work really hard, and like, but we got to also know the why behind what you're working hard towards, and the differentiations between like when to relax, like when it's time to like kind of take more of cool down sets, and how to like really implement like where you're using your energy at and everything, and truly become a workhorse.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think it makes the most sense with my in-person groups, especially the college teams or less larger groups. So I think one of my biggest pieces of my training philosophy of how I try to create an ideal workhorse training environment is some level of competition. And so I think this is really growing in the strength and conditioning field. I feel like I see a lot of coaches bringing this in more, but even compared when I started. I started only 6 years ago or so. And so from that 6 years ago to today, I see a much different perspective on training of coaches seeing the value in competition and bringing in 1v1 competitive environments and full team competitive environments into the training. So the training isn't so mechanical and periodized and clean cut, but a little more chaotic and aggressive and changing. And so I think I'll try to use big games, try to use one-on-one competitions. That can be things like races, tag, some variations of wrestling or grappling, just to get athletes more excited and pushing each other and trying to use what we've built in the weight room, maybe that speed and strength in a more chaotic environment is going to translate onto the ice or onto the field where they play their sport a little more. And so I'll usually start a session with something that gets them out of their comfort zone. I think a good example with the hockey team, like maybe we'll play soccer with a yoga ball because we'll be in our hockey rink with turf down, so there's boards all the way around. And so I'll just have them the first 5-10 minutes, we're just going to play soccer with a yoga ball. Like it doesn't work that well, obviously. And that's kind of the point because it gets guys laughing and moving in different directions. Some guys get really into it, really competitive, and then they're warmed up. So I'll try to start with something weird that gets them out of their comfort zone. And then when we actually get into the speed agility part, everything is built around a race or a chase or a tag or something with an external component that you're going after. I just, maybe it's because the coaches who I learned from, that's what they emphasize. Like Austin Yoakum is really into that. But I just also never really learned from a coach who prioritized the mechanics of movement as much. A coach who's into the sprint mechanics, into the change of direction mechanics. And I think it's maybe because I come from a hockey background, and so hockey is obviously a skating sport on the ice where sprint mechanics don't really apply as much. And so when we're sprinting off ice, we're looking at it more from the maybe the muscular, the neurological side of how this is actually being used as a training input, not necessarily mimicking the sprinting stride to the skating stride because they're completely different movements. So kind of back to the main point, bring a competition into the training environment is going to really increase the athlete's engagement. And that's going to increase both that effort, output, determination side and that creative, more artistic, skillful side of movement when I give them that kind of open space to use their athletic abilities within. And then that obviously translates to the online sphere. And I think that's why I try to stay up to date with my Instagram posting and try to give my online clients a good look into what I'm doing with athletes through Instagram. And so I'll try to include both like the details of training, like this is the exercise we're doing, this is how the exercise is executed, but also what does the environment look like? What are we saying to each other? How am I coaching people? What's the music like? What's the atmosphere like? I think that through Instagram, you can really give a good look into what the training session looks like. And I think that's why I attract a good amount of online clients, because they see both the fine details of the training, why I select exercises with the detail I do, but then also it's a good environment. It's fun. It's competitive. And that kind of brings people in, even if they're not literally in the training environment. Just being part of that online community, I think, can really improve someone's training as well. So
How have you, got buy-in from doing, the game style and like kind of getting people to get energetic and fun? It's you can get pretty competitive with hockey players with doing grappling and stuff like that. But then like, how have you done that with soccer too? Because soccer players, I mean, it's not really fully that much of a contact sport, and it's kind of finesse.
mhm.
So how do you get them to kind of, buy into that style of kind of warm ups and like getting the energy going and getting the culture started? And then like also like, cause that's kind of hard to do with online clients too. How do you get them to do it?
Yeah, so with soccer, first of all, I think, yes, obviously hockey and soccer, different sports, maybe a little different population, but I think they share a lot more than what they don't share. I think the competitive nature is there no matter, I think that's with any college athlete. If you're playing like Division 3, like it's lower than Division 1, obviously, but still, it's a high level sport. Most of the guys on our team were the best athlete on their high school soccer team or the best athlete in their school. And so these guys, they have competitive natures that equal or greater than any hockey player I know. So I think part of it is tapping into what do they enjoy more, what competition style do they enjoy more. Like it is true the hockey guys get into the grappling and pushing and wrestling a little bit more, but those soccer guys, if you give them a bigger space, a bigger area to work with, maybe a game with a little more finesse, like you said. So we'll do things like ultimate frisbee. They love that game. Any kind of ultimate variation, any kind of handball, big area variation. That's what they get really into. So partly it's being aware of what these athletes attract more towards, and then you just adapt over time. Like if I give them a game that's a little more, I'm trying to think of a game that didn't work well with them. I mean, like one thing, it doesn't really work well as a warm up anyway, but like kickball or wiffle ball, like soccer guys, like a couple guys kind of into it, but not really because you're so stationary. Soccer guys, they're like what's an animal, like a deer. They just run around all the time, like a rabbit. They're just always moving. And so like wiffle ball is not a good game for them. Hockey guys, like, yeah, they'll play some wiffle ball because like they're okay standing around a little bit more. But the soccer guys, they want to keep moving the whole time. So you got to give them a game that's change of direction, that's fast paced, that's a bigger field. And then also, I mean, I think also I was fortunate enough to work with a really good soccer program. We were at one point, I think the highest we got up to number 3 in the nation. We made the NCAA Elite Eight. We're in the tournament every year, and so like it's a good program, and it is. I think it is physical. It's definitely a contact sport. The bigger, stronger players, they can dominate that game, especially defenders. So I think it's also one thing I've noticed is watching the game you're coaching and really looking at what are the skills and the movements that make a good player stand out. It's common to work with a sport, especially as a college strength coach, and maybe not look at the nuances of the sport you're coaching. Like if I were to coach a volleyball team, I've never played volleyball. I don't know what volleyball is, but what I think of volleyball and what volleyball actually is are probably different things. So if I'm not watching that sport and seeing what skills, actions, and movements come up frequently and separate the good from the great players, my training and coaching are going to be limited. So I picked up over time that soccer is definitely a contact, physicality based sport. And then it's also just adapting to what these athletes seem to enjoy and get engaged more with, and from that bigger fields and more space. And then for the online clients, it's definitely harder, right? Because it's not a full group. I'm not there in person to kind of adapt the session based on what they're into. So part of it is giving them individual drills or movements they can do on their own. Think like anything that's involved with tennis ball chase. Like I'll have them just like throw a tennis ball to chase. I'll have them do change of direction or throwing two tennis balls back and forth to stop and get one, go to grab the other. But then I think it's also maybe some targets over time, like just having a target to shoot for. Like and that could be as simple as losing weight or lifting heavier weight or improving their sprints overall. But I think those online clients see the quality of the training that I post online, and they see the high energy of those sessions. And I think that does carry over to their training on their own because they're trying to replicate that community that they see on Instagram. So just being transparent with my Instagram posts of what these sessions look like and just holding those to a high standard of high intensity, high creativity, very fun environments that reward hard work and good competition. So yeah.
Any other like,
What
are
are
there any other like archetypes of like on the team sports? Because I feel like I've heard the term before, critical mass, and just thinking about it when you were saying well workhorse, like it is always good to have a workhorse on your team, whether he's the best athlete on the field or not. You know, just somebody to look to where it's like that guy's probably jogging back when we're done with the drill and everybody else is walking, so everybody will start jogging. Would you say there's any other like archetypes of athletes that you would need that you feel like you need on a in like team sports that kind of drive a team forward?
Mhm. Yeah. So I think two things with that. So first of all, yeah, okay. So the workhorse idea, like the archetype of the workhorse, I feel like that has changed over time because of my observation of teams I work with and groups I work with. The kind of the guy you just mentioned, like the guy who jogs back when everyone walks back, who's always pushing a little harder, who's maybe a little more vocal, like all those things. That is very rarely the best athlete on the team, at least what I've seen. The guy who works hard all the time, who is always giving 110% and make sure everyone's like on the same page with him. I haven't seen that to be the best player. I've seen that to be sometimes good athletes, but the best athletes on the team, they know when to get into that mindset and when not to. The best athletes are so aware of their physical body of right now, I need a little more rest. Right now, we just did that hard drill. I'm not going to run back because I need some energy. I need to recover before this next bout. And so if someone is so locked into that mindset of I am always the hardest worker, I'm always pushing the most, I think that's going to limit your performance because you're not as tuned in with what your body is doing and how your body's feeling. And also even how the team is feeling or not. If the team is in a practice and things aren't going well, maybe just the passes aren't clicking, the skating feels off, the answer is not always work harder. It's just not. Sometimes the answer is step back, talk about our strategy. Or maybe we're playing with two guys too high. Should we bring one guy back? Maybe we're not talking enough. Maybe honestly, do we need to just sit down and rest a little bit so that this next rep can be better? So I think being attached to that mindset of always working the hardest is not a recipe for long-term success. It's just because I haven't seen that. I haven't seen a player who's always the hardest worker being the best athlete consistently. I think it's a mindset you need to tap into because there are absolutely times when it's a practice where the coach is demanding a lot, when it's a serious game with a good opponent, like you need to have that ability to bring everything you have to put that effort in. But I think that mindset doesn't work well on the long term. I think it's something you tap into, but not something to live in. And so then that's other archetypes because obviously there's leaders on the team. There's going to be younger guys who are more followers who are trying to emulate the leaders. And so having leaders who think about everyone on the team, I think that's a big one. Other guys who are left out, other guys who seem to not be confident in their skills. I think those leaders need to be able to observe where their teammates are at I think that those are the big ones. I think being able to tap into that workhorse mindset and then being aware of how the whole team is functioning on the individual basis are just critical components of a team. So yeah.
What are some challenges that you face? You know, because I mean, if you look at the D1 level compared to the D3 level, just the equipment and the weight rooms and all that stuff, what are some challenges that you face that you feel like have kind of maybe hindered the way you train or have programmed things compared to if you were at like a top facility or something like that?
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to actually go through a weight room transformation at Gustavus. My first year, we had a tiny weight room, so small. I think we had 8 racks and not that much space. Like it was just a condensed tiny area. And so that had its own challenges. And then over the summer, they built massive new weight room. I think 30 something racks, tons of space, nice open, lot of bright windows, great space, beautiful. But each space had its own challenges. The old weight room, the tiny, enclosed, cramped, no windows, dirty basement, not a lot of space. So if I bring the whole hockey team in and football teams in here, like there's no space. There's nowhere to lift because there's football guys on every rack. It's the hallway's full. What do we do? So then we got to spread out. We use the whole athletic building. We go up. We use the indoor racquetball courts. We try to find space in the indoor track. We'll go in the hallways. We'll do things in the warm up rooms. You just have to use space creatively, and that's where you can use things like body weight training. A lot of plyometrics. We did a lot of isometric holds. A lot of partner resisted reps. So things like lying supine on your chest, and you bring one leg up, do a partner resisted hamstring curl, things like that, because you have to be creative, or you use bands or med balls or whatever. But that space had its own challenges just because there wasn't space. The new space, like I said, tons of it, a lot of racks, a lot of open, bright space. But I realized we were missing something. We're missing that energy, that kind of atmosphere of the old weight room. The old weight room, like I said, it's tiny and cramped. You turn the speakers up, there's echoing all the time. It's so loud. The guys work so hard because there's no space to rest. You're on one rack. The next guy's waiting for his set. You have to finish your set and get out of the way so he can go. So there's this level of urgency that brings this great level of again, the competition, great atmosphere in the weight room. This new space, it felt like a resort. It felt like we're just kind of hanging out in the weight room. There's no need to push. Like we're here. This is a great space. Look how bright and clean it is. And the sessions were worse. So I had to figure out, yeah, I have more equipment now. I have more literal racks to use, but we're not doing the same level of work. We're not training as hard. So then you have to bring in, I think this helped a lot was I had to evaluate in the program, what are things that maybe that I don't value for how they improve the athlete, but I value for how they improve the atmosphere. And so there's 2 things. 1, med balls, and 2, competitive jumps. So for med balls, we did so many med ball slams. I would just have them do med ball slams every workout because it's so loud, because it's fun, not for any reason of like core development power. I don't care. We can do other things for that. But there's just med balls smashing on the ground the whole workout. That's creating an atmosphere and a sound that's just elevating people. And if I give them the cue to break the med ball, one guy actually breaks a med ball, the whole team goes nuts. That's going to bring up the level of the training session more than any exercise. And then the second one, doing jumps, either a measured broad jump, a measured vertical jump with a jump mat, and then having those scores posted on a clipboard. I'm right there looking at the score for every jump. I write down the best score. We have a top 5 leaderboard. Now everyone's trying to get in the leaderboard. That's going to bring up the level of the training session as well. So each weight room had its own challenges and its own positives, obviously. Somewhere in the new weight room, we got a lot more space to work with. And then also, last one with that, the music you're playing in the training session, this would irritate me so much. I'd come into the weight room and the weight room staff is playing like a top 40 pop playlist at like a 10 volume. That's not going to bring up the energy of a weight room. So I go in there, I'm going to turn on either Metallica or a rap playlist or some EDM DJ set, turn to volume 100. And now we're actually going. Now the energy in the weight room is elevated to where guys are pushing on the same level as they would during a game. Because if you go to a sports game, especially a hockey game, and you listen to the warm-up playlist, what they're playing during the on-ice warm-ups, like I said, they're playing Metallica and Jay-Z and Future, and they're playing some like Tiesto, Skrillex stuff. Like they're playing like the loudest, most intense music to get guys to that elevated state. And that's where I want them to be in some parts of training. When we're doing the high intensity, the heavy weights, the full speed jumps and sprints, I want them elevated as they are during a game. So again, I think play that same music to get them to that same mental state. Not all the time, because sometimes we're going to work on more mobility and the slower things, or I want them more in tune with their body, and then maybe turn it down, maybe play some forest sounds. I'm serious. I'll play like jungle sound ambiance to get them really relaxed, and we're doing that cool down of that mobility and stretching. So just being aware of how the environment affects the training session and the athlete's mental state, I think that's a huge part of coaching that is not talked about a lot, but it's as important as any exercise I've found. So
How does that collide though? You know what I mean? Because like you're coming in and you're kind of bringing your own style and stuff, and you're working only with, hockey and soccer, and then the football team sees this or the basketball team sees it or whatever. The other coaches are seeing what you're doing. How is that, kind of butted heads, or have other guys kind of taken it and kind of try to learn from you? Because like we're in an industry where it's a very ego driven, right? Like one coach like, sees another coach doing it, like, nah, I can do it better. Instead of like being in the side of like, well, maybe he's doing something right and let me learn from him. Like, how have you seen these two kind of, mesh or kind of like butt heads?
yeah, so I was fortunate enough to not really butt heads with anyone. I didn't think I ran into any problems like that at Gustavus. I think it was really the opposite, like you said. I think people saw some of the exercises, some of the energy, some of the ideas that I brought in, and some adopted it. And if someone didn't like it, they just kind of stayed away from it. So I think that was really a great dynamic we had. One thing I really appreciated was, like you said, if I come in and the football team's already in there, again, like massive space concern. Me and the football coaches were great about that. Like they understood that we have, I mean, that's like the equal right to come into the weight room and use it just like they do. So we would create space. We'd say, all right, we'll take these 8 racks. You guys take these 8 racks. We'll stay out on our own way. But also, like I said earlier about how hockey and soccer guys share more than what they don't share, football guys and soccer guys, football guys and hockey guys, basketball, like these are competitive athletes. They thrive in very similar environments. And so I think like if I was not in the weight room and the football team was training, they're going to have loud music. They're going to have competitive jumps. They're going to have heavy lifts and yelling at each other and throwing med balls at each other. So I think most every athlete is going to thrive in a high intensity environment like that. And I think the coaches that I worked with recognized that, and they saw how hard our guys were training, and they just kind of rolled with it. So I really didn't run into any issues like that. And it was kind of fun to collaborate with those coaches. The football strength coach at Gustavus, his name is Zach Vine. He was awesome to work with, both in that communication of when are we going to be in the weight room, what space do we need, but also I think a couple of times we had our athletes train in the same session where I had the football guys and the soccer guys do the same workout together, where I think we played some similar game, some handball game in the indoor basketball court. We used a big yoga ball, and we were just having the football guys play the soccer guys in their sport. So that was really fun. So I think collaboration between the teams improved the training overall. And then in the weight room, same thing, just training together, I think improved the level of both teams. So yeah, really no issues I ran into.
That's good. I mean, that's always a hard thing to do, when you got so many athletes in one place and two different
Sure.
coaches trying to correlate and work together. But, a big thing nowadays is the online thing. So a lot of coaches are doing online training, sending out their programs and stuff. Can you take us through not only how you got your programs out there and started selling them, but how you learned the business side of everything and how you continue to grow like your Instagram and get more clients and stuff? Because that's a huge thing, especially for a lot of our listeners in Europe that are trying to grow their own side of the business. How did you go about it?
Yeah, good question. So I started, my first online program was terrible. It wasn't terrible. It was formatted terribly. I wrote it in a Google sheet, and I think I literally wrote the whole training session out, the whole like 6 weeks in a Google sheet, select all, download, and then I put that in a PDF and then linked it to PayPal. People bought it. And like the training itself, like I think it's good workouts, but no videos, no pictures, some descriptions. I wrote kind of like an introduction, but it was very simple. It was a PDF Google sheet. But I mean, it got good feedback because like the training itself was decent. And the way I promoted it was, I mean, partly just I posted on Instagram for like years before that. So I didn't do my first program until like some years of building up a decent following and some familiarity with my concepts and methods. But then my second program, then I included some videos. I included some walkthroughs of me like describing the exercises, and that worked a little better. And then my most recent program, Racehorse 2, that was definitely my best program, partly because I put so much more time into it. But I think I released it in August. And essentially from May, June, July, I was kind of like teasing it the whole time, like working on Racehorse 2. Here's some of Racehorse 2. Post a little bit of workout, post an exercise, post one of the days, post, and just keep teasing it the whole time. So that people ask like, when's it coming out? When is it coming out? I'm like waiting. I'm waiting for this. I'm planning my training around when you're going to release this, so I can start it on day one. And that was great because I think that anticipation kind of led to the release of it, and then it sold pretty well when I first put it out. And then when the actual program itself, it's all PDFs, but I have links to videos. So I had video demonstrations of every exercise where I talked a little about like, this is what you're going to do here. You're going to set up a band in this direction. Here's how you set up the band. And you execute the exercise as so. I also had some longer form videos where I would just talk like this in front of the camera, talk about the methods, talk about why am I choosing to put this exercise on this day? What mental state do I think this exercise demands? Things like that. So I think providing as much content into that last program as possible, I think that really helped it as well, because then people would buy it and it's like, oh, this is a good program. And then maybe they tell their friend this is a good program. Maybe they repost it and that kind of spreads. If you're putting out poor quality or maybe just kind of copy pasted quality, like you saw someone else post a program, you saw them post an exercise, and you just copy paste, put it in your program and try to sell it, it's nothing special. And so having something that is unique in terms of maybe the exercise or the goals or the wording, anything that's unique in your own, anything that's organic, that's going to sell a little better. And then as for growing the Instagram, because obviously the more the Instagram grows, the more people see it, the more people maybe potentially want to buy the program. It's understanding how Instagram works as a social media system and what people are on the app for. So I think I made not the mistake. I'm thinking if your goal on Instagram is to sell programs, you need to look at Instagram from a certain perspective. My initial goal with Instagram when I was a couple of years ago, before I was trying to sell programs, was mostly a communication tool. I'm going to put out this piece of training and like, hey, what do you guys think about this training? Just like talk to the void of Instagram. Like maybe there's someone out there. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? Maybe I post some like reading I did from a training book or a philosophy book and ask, what do you guys think about this? Like a communication tool. But then as I started to try to monetize the account more and try to make money off of it, most people are not on Instagram to learn. Most people are not on Instagram to intellectually stimulate themselves and to learn more about the world. No, they're there for entertainment. They're there because today turning on Netflix is too much effort. And Instagram is right there. You can just swipe right there. They're there for entertainment. And so if you're trying to expand your Instagram, you have to make posts that are entertaining. And so maybe that's things like very short clips or popular music or videos that grab your attention right away. And so some people, I think, get too carried away with that, where it's, this exercise is going to kill you. This exercise will save your life. Like that works for some people. That's not really my style, but like that works. You see those accounts and they have 300,000 followers because people are just swiping and they see, oh, this exercise will save my life. Okay, I'll click on it. And so I think for me now, it's trying to balance both. I want my Instagram to be a place of communication and education and engagement and like thoughtful, serious, like contemplation of how we train and how we live. But also, if I'm trying to make part of my living off of it, there has to be some element of it's just pure entertainment clickbait. Like it has to be something that's going to grab someone's attention, something that is either entertaining, makes you think, makes you angry, turns you on, like something that's going to grab your attention. That is going to drive the Instagram algorithm to show your account to more people. And so for me, it's kind of both right now. I'm trying to use both sides of that equation. So
What do you think is like next in strength and conditioning? Because I feel like there are coaches out there like you that provide great value, but just like you said, you have to kind of sell your soul to the devil and say like, you want to get fast today, do these 5 drills and stuff that you genuinely don't believe, but you have to use to market it. And Coop and I have talked about this all the time, and I guess like you see a lot of coaches in the college world that have gotten into online training, obviously to put a little money in their pockets, and you and get some money off of the training programs that they provide. What do you think what is next in the strength and conditioning world for?
I think, yeah, for sure. I just can't see that the method you're describing, that what I pointed to of the clickbait, pure engagement, nothing below the surface level of education. I can't see that being a successful model long term, because you have to turn it at some point into, I think you have to turn it into an ideology with some level of substance behind it. So like Knees Over Toes guy, he's the classic example of a great marketer with some solid principles that also utilizes the maybe the devil of what Instagram is. So the philosophy of News Over Toes guy, right? It's you take the exercises that you can't do well, the positions you can't get into well, you regress them to a point where you can do them, then you progressively overload the movements until you can do them. Like that's great. That's training. But the way that it's marketed by all his like minions, it works really well because they post like you do the Nordic and you do the KOT split squat, you do the tib raise, and you're going to be fast because that draws people in. And so it's honestly a great philosophy under the surface that's marketed as saving your life without much substance. And that works well. But I think you can do that for a certain amount of time. But if you don't have that underlying philosophy of something meaningful, something substantial, I just can't see that working long term. So for me, I don't really do like the pure clickbait of like claims, like outlandish claims. I try to do clickbait more in terms of like engaging videos that people actually want to watch. So maybe for me, that's kind of like weird exercises. Like I'll post things that are more unconventional exercises. I mean, people like stop and think like, why is that? Why is he doing that? It makes you ponder a little bit. But and then I try to include a little bit of meaningful substance underneath, maybe explaining why this exercise occurs, why we're doing this, why we're adding a band here, why we're adding this cue here. So I think if someone is going to have their Instagram platform or their social media platform kind of take off and be a substantial source of income, I think you need both the knowledge of how to utilize the Instagram algorithm of clickbait and claims and entertainment value. But if you don't have that underlying philosophy that has some substance to it, it can't be sustainable long term. So you kind of need both. So you need both the knowledge of the training and the knowledge of the entertainment and the business side. I think that's got to be their balance that you build your future on.
On top of that, who else are you like? What coaches? Not only as you see on Instagram, but what coaches are you like learning from and kind of taking bits and pieces from their philosophies and methodologies and kind of like implementing it into your own stuff to kind of continue to help yourself grow and continue to become like a better coach?
Yeah, for sure. That's a good question. So for training itself, the past couple of years now, I've been more focused on speed training and sprinting. And so I really enjoyed the coaching of Chris Corfist, Dan Fichter, some of Cal Dietz, some of Joel Smith, Just Fly Sports. Like those four were really good base in terms of learning more about the mechanics of sprinting, how you address individual mechanics of sprinting, how you structure training programs, short term and long term, and then also their thought process of how they look at the body and human movement. So those four have been excellent for me. I'm trying to think of, kind of before that, like I said, I think for anyone who's working with hockey players and if you haven't read Jack Blatherwick or haven't heard of him, that's a really easy way to vastly improve your training knowledge and your ability to work with hockey players and understanding the mechanics of skating in relation to running and how they're different, how they need to be trained differently. So Jack Blatherwick is an excellent resource. And then another person who was a big influence on my methods, Clance Layler. He's a coach out of York, Ontario, outside of Toronto. He works with mostly CFL and NHL guys. And I worked with him earlier on in my training. He's kind of a classic like Charlie Francis, squats and cleans and Olympic lifting guy. But I think his methodology of sprint training correlates really well with, if you guys know, Tony Haller's Feed the Cats training philosophy. Very similar in terms of how they think about both lifting and sprinting. So I think he's another good guy to look into. Yeah, I think those are kind of like the main resources right now. If one comes up later in my head, I'll shout it out. But I think those are kind of like the big Mount Rushmore of who I've got right now.
Who would you say in the online space and like marketing and?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think Austin Yoakum. I think he was one of the first guys I worked with, who I interned with. So he taught me a lot of kind of like the things I just said, the things about the entertainment versus the substance of drawing people in with the entertainment, but then keeping them around with that more meaningful substance that they learn from. So I think Austin Yoakum is a great guy to look into. And then if you were to ask him, he would say rugby strength coach Keir Wenham Flatt. I haven't really done anything. I haven't done his courses. I haven't read his books. I haven't really done much with him. But I know Yoakum would say him. And so if you want to follow the tree, you just follow the tree a little bit higher up. So yeah.
If you look back at 15, 16-year-old yourself, what would be the best advice you give to yourself from now to look back at?
Man, that's a good question. 15, 16-year-old, what grade was that? I was like 9th, 10th grade. I think
About ninth
one,
grade, yeah.
yeah, no, like that's wow, that's a long time ago. That's when I was still really into hockey, really into training for hockey, and looking back on how I trained for hockey versus how I would train now, I just did not do enough off ice speed work. I lifted weights way too much. I would just be in the weight room for 2 hours every day lifting weights and then go home. And I would do some sprints, do some jumps, but not nearly enough. So I would tell myself, get out on the track more, do more full speed sprints, do more plyometrics, more hurdle hops, more broad jumps, more rapid jumps, things that are going to train my nervous system to move faster, because I did not need to build that much muscle to skate. You need to be really quick to skate. You need some muscle in specific areas. But I was training like a bodybuilder and power lifter for a sport that's more dynamic and closer to track and field than it is to powerlifting. And beyond that, I think transfer the same thing onto the ice. I think that's something that I'm just confused by when I look at hockey on ice training, when I look at how coaches train athletes on ice. Maybe I'm just not seeing, maybe I'm not looking at the right people. Maybe it is out there, I'm not seeing it. But I don't understand why the methods from track and field sprinting aren't applied to hockey, why the methods from speed skating aren't applied to hockey. Because if everyone says speed kills, everyone says we want the fastest players, and then in practice you never actually skate full speed, you never actually work on, maybe you never do timed sprints on the ice. Like, why? Why do we not do this? If we care so much about the speed of our play, why is that not transferred onto the ice? So if I were to talk to myself back then, it'd be do more full speed sprints off the ice and more full speed sprints on the ice. So if you're not actually training that on the ice, you're not going to improve it in games. So in terms of the hockey realm, that's kind of what I would talk to my younger self about. And honestly, for the rest of the life, I'm not going to say anything. I just want them to figure it out and go through the same things because I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. But I think it's just, like I said earlier, not being so attached to identities, of not being so attached to the identity of workhorse, not being so attached to the identity of hockey player, not being so attached to any identity, because that's gonna slow you down in the long term. Because identities aren't going to last beyond maybe your name. You can change your name though, so maybe not even your name is going to last. But things that you attach yourself to just, I think, end up slowing you down in the end because you're not able to pivot and adapt and respond to what life is telling you later on. So that being able to fully live out an identity of being the workhorse and fully embracing that, then being able to take a step back and move on to something else. So yeah.
With that said, giving yourself advice, what challenges are you facing now in the sports performance world?
How to attract more in-person training, more in-person training clients to my training programs that when I can't get as many as I thought it would. So I think that's one thing. I don't know how to address that. That's one thing I'm thinking about. Maybe I need to talk to more area coaches, like talk to the high schools in my areas, see if anyone needs like a strength coach for the off season, things like that. Trying to be more involved with different community teams and different community training programs. So that's one thing I'm facing. And then I just cannot bench more than my current PR. I've been training for so long and I cannot get my bench to where I want it to be. So I'm working on that. I can't figure out why. I feel like I've tried everything, but I'll keep pushing, but it's frustrating. So that's another one.
Might have reached that genetic ceiling.
What about, if you look at, if a strength coach were to come to you today, like a new guy in the field, just now getting started, what would be, some advice you would give to them? Like they're trying to get to a point that you're at, or even go past that. Like, what would you tell them?
That like when you're growing your hair out long and it's just like this weird medium length, you can't really style, you can't really tie it back, you can't really do anything with it. If you go through that stage of training and coaching. And so for what I did, I just went out, I talked to every college strength coach I could find. I talked to every online coach I could find. I'd set up calls. I would go visit guys in their gyms. And every time you pick up a little bit more, maybe you pick up what you don't want to do. Like I went to this gym and I saw how this coach trained. I saw his training style, his methods, his cues. I hated all of it, but that's good because now I know what I don't like. I'm building out more of my knowledge through both what I like and what I don't like. So it's getting out in the world, talking to people. You're never going to find a job from your bedroom, I don't think. So you have to go out and actually talk to people, find those connections. That's a big one. And then I think a second one that really helped me and also helped me kind of distinguish myself from other coaches is drawing from realms outside of strength and conditioning and drawing from realms of literature, philosophy, religious studies, psychology, things that aren't directly applicable to training. It's not about your hamstring. It's not about your squat max, but it's about things that you can correlate easily. correlate with some thoughtful work on them. Because if you think about the history of human knowledge, how long has strength and conditioning been around? 100 years, maybe not even that long. Nebraska, Cornhuskers, Soviet Union, like that's not even 100 years ago. Human history, what is that? 30,000 years at least. Written language started, what, 20-ish thousand years ago? I have no idea. But that's so much more time. You need to look at the entirety of human knowledge of like what can actually pull from the realms of psychology. If I'm trying to get buy-in from an athlete, what's been the greatest method in world history to get buy-in? Religion. Why are you not studying religion? Why are you not studying how religious prophets preach? Why are you not studying how cults begin? Because that's how you get buy-in. Maybe you don't want to go that direction. Like the strength coach is not the new messiah, but he can use the methods of a religious prophet to then bring the athletes in through talking about a promised land. The promised land is success. The promised land is winning the national championship. It's all metaphors. It's not literal, but it's metaphors. If I'm not relating the present day and our actions to how it relates to the eternal being our goal, I'm not going to get the buy-in I thought I could. If I'm only talking about the profane, this daily action, this back squat, the mechanics of your knee drive and sprinting, no one cares. How is it related to the ultimate, related to the ideal? So I think that's one thing that coaches should think about more is how do we draw knowledge from other realms of human knowledge? Because strength and conditioning is not it. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a new field, sure. But human history and human knowledge expands way beyond that. So you got to look at other places, I think, too.
I never thought of it like that. When you put it like that, now it kind of
Sure.
it makes sense to kind of talk about the I get it now. I get that. That makes a lot of sense. But before we get out of here, man, we got our 60-second round. It's 10 questions, 1-word answers. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go. 60 seconds on the clock. Dream vacation spot.
Colorado.
Favorite car.
Land Rover.
Favorite sport and train.
Body Armor Liquid IV, or Body Armor IV, the new one they just put out. So good.
Favorite athlete or best athlete you've ever trained.
Ever trained? I got to say, Jared, my boy Jared Hecht, soccer player.
Okay. Would you rather be in an octagon with a gorilla, tiger, or a bear?
Gorilla, tiger, or bear? Dude, let's go. Bear. They're all bad options. Smoothie.
Your number one flaw as a coach?
My lack of technical biological knowledge.
And last one, best gym you've ever been to?
That is an impossible question. I got two answers. Los Campeones in Minneapolis for bodybuilding and like upper body pump. That's the best place. And then Velocity Training Center for sprints and athlete development.
And that is it, Coach. We appreciate you being here with us today. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be here and share all the knowledge across the board with everything you've got going on, right? If you got the opportunity to check out Work Coach Training, definitely check it out. I went and checked it out myself. Obviously, we found him on Instagram, and everything he's doing is tremendous work, right? He's not only out there just for entertainment, he's also dropping a bunch of knowledge on his Instagram too. So if you got a chance to reach out to Coach, go ahead and do that. And thank you again for being here with us today.
Thank you all so much. I really enjoyed this talk. Yeah. Thank you both.
Appreciate it. And we're out.